If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. Alice has been having some problems with her mission with the Coils of Bahamut, and she decides to ask Urianger for a bit of his overly complicated sage advice. Bahamut's regenerating pretty fast, and there are still 2 internment husks that need to be turned off. She's found where they are, but she doesn't know how to get to them. Once you do manage to figure out how to get inside, you'll still have to deal with all of the Allegan tech, as well as whatever other guards Bahamut has enthralled. That includes Louisoix. But those problems only matter once you find a way inside. Urianger figures that the best way to do that is for Alice to take the Warrior of Light with her to the fragments of Bahamut, since him just being there tends to cause things to happen. While the two of you do that, Urianger will try to figure out a way inside using his own methods. Since she trusts the Warrior of Light, she agrees. There are 2 remaining fragments of Bahamut, one in eastern Thanalan and another near Mordona. Alice's left some of her people in each of the areas looking for a way inside. It's been a while, so they may have gotten lucky, so the two of you head to see Dex by the burning wall. The man's excited to meet the Warrior of Light, but unfortunately he hasn't managed to find a way into the fragment. He can see the entrance, but there's no way to get through all of the corrupted ether crystals. Since the Thanalan path is a bust, the two of you head off to Mordona to see if Sinis has had a little bit of better luck. That may not be the case, since apparently Dex has lost contact with his brother. Since there are a lot of monsters in the area, he could very well be dead, so the Warrior of Light and Alice race off to hopefully save him. The man was injured but not dead, but sadly the piece of Bahamut near him is impenetrable too. While Alice's assistants haven't found a way to make it into the place, a call from Urianger lets the two of you know that he's found one. He wants the two of you to meet him at the cerulean processing plant in northern Thanalan so he can show you what he means. There are no fragments of Bahamut in the area, but there is a path inside, one that the two of you have used before every time you'd come out of the Coils. An ethereal stream had taken the two of you out of the Coils, and Urianger has figured out that the same stream that you rode out away from the first internment husk on is connected to each of the others through a giant machine. Him and his assistant figured that out, as well as how to travel to one of the areas that you hadn't explored yet. You'll be using a modified aetherite for your trip, but since it's untested, the trip could kill you both, or have you reappear with swapped body parts or a whole lot of other unpleasant things. That's a risk that Alice is willing to take, as is Urianger's assistant, who turns out to be Alphino. She's not happy that Urianger told her brother about her mission, and she promises to have words with him later once Bahamut is dealt with. He's cool with that, but since Louisoix is both of the twins' grandfather, he thought it only fair if Alphino knew what was going on too. As long as he doesn't interfere with her continuing her grandfather's mission of protecting Eorzea, she doesn't really care. But Alphino is still worried about the fact that she's fighting for someone else's goal and doesn't have a clue what she really wants for herself. Alice obviously gets angry at him for questioning her, something that she's only slightly grown out of over time. But what she doesn't understand is that Alphino isn't against her fight. He just wants her to be able to answer the question of why she's doing it. And while it may not seem all that important, it is, especially in a world filled with primals and tempering. The two of them would argue back and forth about it forever, which is what siblings tend to do, but Bahamut regenerating is a more serious problem, so the twins stop arguing, and Alice agrees to let Alphino tag along, as long as he follows orders, so the three of you make your way into the final coil of Bahamut. It's Alphino's first time seeing the insides of Bahamut, so naturally he's excited. But Alice is just happy that the little teleportation trick sent you all to a working internment husk. Since there's no telling how much more Bahamut has regenerated since the last time you had all been there, that means you need to shut it down quickly. There are plenty of containers holding Allegan creations, so it's likely that this trip won't be any easier than the last ones. The monsters are just as brutal as they always were, but as the Warrior of Light cuts a path through them, the group comes across some Allegan containers holding some very unexpected creatures, dragons. A lot of them. They knew that the Allagans had figured out how to control dragons, but they hadn't thought they had locked away so many. They had so many other guardians that they wouldn't have really needed the dragons, but that's not what they have them for. It doesn't take long for Alice to realize that the reason the Allagans had so many dragons imprisoned was to use them to maintain Bahamut's physical form. That means all of those dragons have to die, or the threat of Bahamut won't end with his death. It's also likely that the dragon woke up and tried to destroy everything, because mortals seem to keep finding ways to do cruel things to the winged lizards that are the size of buildings. The fact that everyone keeps messing with them sounds dumber and dumber when you really pay attention to just how big the lead dragons are. Regardless of the fact that the Bahamut problem was brought on by mortals, he still needs to be put down, and since the machine keeping him locked up is likely the same one keeping the dragons alive, turning it off will solve both problems. So the three of you keep moving deeper into the coil. When you all reach Bahamut, you see that he is very close to being fully awake, so Alice goes to turn off the internment husk. As a surprise to no one, Louisoix appears to block your path. Alice has finally accepted the fact that he's not really her grandfather, but that's all talk because she's still affected by his words, especially when he questions her cause. He says that they only think of Bahamut as a villain because of what happened in the moments when he broke free, but they don't know the whole story. During the Third Astral Era, the Allagans had invaded Mericidia. Since they couldn't beat them, the Mericidians prayed to Bahamut, reviving him as a powerful god, but instead of defeating the Allagans, he got imprisoned by them. Louisoix had summoned the 12 to help with his people's problems in a very similar way that the Mericidians had summoned Bahamut. So his question is, why were the 12 celebrated while Bahamut is hated? It's hypocrisy to him, even though it probably has something to do with the fact that the 12 didn't try to kill the people, which kinda ruins his argument. But after what the Allagans have done, the only way that the dragons will ever know peace is if the mortals are wiped out entirely. And after everything they've done to the dragons, this mind-controlled Louisoix thinks that wiping out the mortals would be justice. That's the complete opposite of what the real Louisoix believed, since he believed that people were always worth saving, but now he thinks that it was foolish to believe that mortals even deserve to be saved at all. They can't stand together on anything since they start out by arguing about what direction they should face. The one thing that history shows is that if there's anything for mortals to argue about, they will find it. He even points out how the twins argue about everything and use their resources to guide people into doing what they want, which makes them no different than the Allagans. He had given the twins matching grimoire to bring them closer together, but even that had been a waste of effort. Alphinaud admits that Louisoix is right about them, but hearing his grandfather talk about how bad mortals are when the man was the one who cared the most about people just seems fake. He wants to know if Louisoix really believes what he's saying, or is it all because he's a thrall of Bahamut, or is it because of a third option? Has Louisoix himself become a primal? Alice hadn't even thought of that possibility, but it seems to be the truth. Somehow during the fight with Bahamut, Louisoix acquired the powers of a primal himself, but if you want to know how, you'll have to fight him, so he turns into his primal form, that of a phoenix, and attacks, which is why the Warrior of Light is there. He faces off against Louisoix, who is very much alive and not a creation of Bahamut at all, and manages to bring him down after quite a few slashes with his sword. Just like when you beat Nail, beating Louisoix broke him free from Bahamut's control. He is dying, but at least he can spend the last bit of time that he has as himself. The twins are happy to get a true reunion with their grandfather, although Alphinaud does feel a little bad for how he had talked to the man while he was tempered. Louisoix wasn't offended, and he's actually proud of the boy for figuring out what he'd become, which leads him to tell you all what really happened in the fight with Bahamut. When Bahamut had broken free from Dalamud during the Battle of Cartano, Louisoix had channeled the power of the 12 to help him make an ether prison for Bahamut. It didn't work. The primal was too strong, so he broke free. Louisoix didn't have much else that he could do other than use everything he had to do as much damage as he could and hope that the problem could be dealt with permanently by someone else in the future. But things didn't turn out like that. When the ether prison he had made was broken, the scattered ether filled the sky and combined with all of the prayers of everyone who was fighting below, them praying for a savior, while Louisoix wished for a way to save the land from the calamity, combined with the ether and turned him into the primal phoenix, which is a symbol of rebirth. Since he was fully powered up, he hit Bahamut with everything he had and destroyed his body, which caused the ether to fall into the land to start the process of healing the world. That's why the game was called A Realm Reborn, and why this story was clearly supposed to be a part of the MSQ. Louisoix thought that everything was finished, so he let go of his new power so it could go back to the land too, but Bahamut wasn't dead, so as the power left Louisoix, Bahamut took him. His body still had enough of Phoenix's power to keep Bahamut alive and start his regeneration, and that's where his service to Bahamut began. That's why Eorzea didn't heal the way that it was supposed to. While there are so many areas with corrupted ether crystals, it all comes back to the conflict between Louisoix and Bahamut. And since the Primal is still alive, he has been eating the land's ether. He ate everything that Louisoix had released and is sucking it all out of the world so that he can fully restore his giant primal form and finish what he has started. Normally he wouldn't have been able to survive with all of the damage he had taken, but since the elegant technology of Dalamud was helping to hold him in place, as long as any piece of him survived, he could live. The pieces of Dalamud have been slowly digging their way through the ground toward their prisoner, which is why there are so many pathways underground that no one knew about. And had Alizé not been looking, no one would have discovered this until Bahamut wiped them all out. Since he can't do it himself, Louisoix tells the Warrior of Light to finish off Bahamut, because if he recovers, he won't just kill all mortals. Even the dragons won't survive the calamity he'll cause. Of course, the Warrior of Light agrees, so Louisoix turns off the internment husk and opens a portal that will take you all to the last one. He's finally fading away, but as a last act after telling the twins that they need to find their own purpose in life and reason to fight, especially Alizé, he gives them the last bit of power that he has as a semi-primal and vanishes. With him gone, the three of you head to the final husk, but the moment Alizé tries to turn it off, Bahamut, in his incomplete form, still has enough power to attack. Lucky for the twins, they have just enough power between the two of them, since Louisoix buffed them up a bit, to hold off the attack while the Warrior of Light attacks Bahamut's core. The Primal has a smaller version of himself in there acting as a last line of defense, but because this wasn't done way back when the fight was supposed to happen, he gets wrecked. With Bahamut beaten, Alizé turns off the last machine that's keeping him alive, and the Primal that reshaped the world as well as the dragons that were keeping him there are all finally put to rest. Now that it's done, Alizé wants to know if Alphinaud had always known what their grandfather had become. He had a theory, but he wasn't positive. He had thought it was possible after hearing some of the stories people had told about what they'd seen at Cartno, and that was why he'd been worried that Alizé may have been being tempered by him, and he'd hoped he could help prevent it. It turns out that she was fine, so he doesn't have anything to worry about, but he does want to know if she plans on telling people what they found out about the Primal Phoenix. She won't, because she knows that if she does, people would try to summon him to fix the world, which would suck all of the ether out that's being used to heal it, which would do the exact opposite of what they want. She won't have her grandfather being brought back as an ether-draining primal who would destroy the world that he had died to protect, so the story will die with the three of you. With that settled, you all leave the Coils for the last time, and even though she doesn't plan on telling the world about her grandfather, she will recommend that they seal off the fragments of Dalamud, just in case there's something there that can give people a hint of what happened. Well, Alphinaud will handle that part since he's better at politics, while Alizé heads off down her own path, and she promises that even though the world won't know how you saved them from Bahamut and freed Louisoix, she will never forget, and the next time you meet, she hopes to be an equal to the Warrior of Light. This leads us to her becoming the Alizé that we all know and love today, and it also concludes the story of the Binding Coils of Bahamut. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time guys, later.